So as a behavioral neurologist, I see a lot of people with Alzheimer's. And so I do a lot of work with kind of brain aging. I'm actually developing this one institute, it's the Institute for Brain Health at Mass General, where we kind of work with people to figure out kind of their risk factors over the long term so that we can help preserve their cognitive functioning over time. So in terms of kind of our cognitive functioning as we age, so from early in life, right, so let's start from like the moment you're born, you're like a sponge, you're taking in lots of information, then you start to prune connections, cutting out those extra connections, so you are more efficient in the way that you process. Then around like, you start to really prune connections around like early puberty, and then by the time you're at your 20s is probably we consider like peak cognitive functions in some of them, so things like working memory, those are at peak, and after that it's all just kind of like a downhill. So, so I'm in the same boat as you all. But there are some things that continue to peak over time, so like vocabulary continues to improve over time. But eventually it kind of begins to decline, and that has to do with just the normal, at least currently, like the normal loss of brain cells in the brain. You can imagine as you lose 1, 2, 3 brain cells, very slowly all these different functions begin to lose their fidelity, the associations are not the same, and you kind of rely on more of the core associations that you really developed and have been reinforcing throughout the majority of your life. So things like the ability to sense your internal body, that typically declines over time. It's something called alexithymia. So alexithymia is the actual word is unable to read your own feelings. That's kind of where the roots come from. But that's part of it, is the parts of your brain that help you kind of sense the inside of your body are less accurate, and so you kind of begin to lose this ability to know your internal states. And that might relate to the kind of loss of empathy, for example, where you're not able to really kind of feel for the other person because you're not able to reflect on your own physical feelings anymore.
This is probably a lot more concrete, and I'm not sure this is what you're after, but when we've done work targeting an older audience, for example, we designed a website for an older audience a couple of years ago, and we were very cognizant of certain things like type sizes. Wanted to make sure it was large enough. There was nothing worse than, it happens to me. I go to a restaurant and the menu is, the type is so small, I have to pull out my phone and then you light up the whole place and you irritate everybody at the same time. But why go through that, So there were type sizes, there was also colors. We found that it's more difficult for older people to see reverse type, like white type on a light colored background. So we tried to actually use higher contrast. So we actually had a set of a dozen rules that we used to design pages, and also what calls to action look like. So a button was extremely clear. It's funny, my mother tried to post something on Facebook the other day to me, and she said, I didn't see the return button, so I decided I was just going to text it to you, instead. So, but there are all things to be cognizant of, when you're designing. A lot of it is visual, I think we've found.
Well, I'd add for the hearing as well, with like what's called presbycusis, kind of you lose the ability to hear certain sounds or discriminate. So as we all age, our ability to hear very high-pitched sound goes down. So have you ever been by like an ice cream parlor where like sometimes there's a really high-pitched sound playing meant to keep kind of like the whippersnappers away, because only the young kids can really hear that sound. As you age, you lose the ability to hear these very, very high-pitched sounds like a dog whistle, which is why it's better to speak in a low, kind of very deliberate kind of voice when you speak with people who are hard of hearing. So you can imagine if you want to increase kind of like the cognitive ease of taking in the sensory information, and you're targeting an older population, keeping messages very simple and very crisp includes kind of the lower register.